Hello, guys and gals, animal friends and spirit pals. Welcome to my channel. Thanks for joining me as always. I hope you have a good time here today. Today's video is going to be an animal tale. And today's animal tale is called A Tale of Two Jaguars. Jaguars, who doesn't love Jaguars? And I know you're going to like this story, so go ahead, push the like button even before we get started so you don't forget at the end. Do it for me, do it for the Jaguars. Now, Jaguars, let me tell you a couple of facts about the Jaguars. But first, I'm going to ask Pan if he'll bring the energy of Jaguars in to our group tonight as we're talking about them, and let that energy share and intermingle with us as we're focusing in on them and giving them some loving energy. Okay, Pan, he's going to call that energy forward for me. And here it comes. So they're stepping right up, and they'll be like around the group interacting as we do this little story today. Okay, good. Great. Jaguars are the largest big cat in the Americas. They range from southwestern United States to Mexico, Central America, and South America. Now, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find one in the United States these days, but apparently it still could be possible. But mostly you'd be a little farther and less populated. But they can live in the jungles, but also out in open areas as well. They have the mightiest jaws of all the big cats. They're the third largest big cat, so lions and tigers are larger, and then come the jaguars. But they have the mightiest jaws. Big, powerful jaws. And they also kill their prey sometimes in a very unusual way. They'll just do one big chomp right between their ears and just pierce into their prey's brain and just kill them instantly. And unlike other cats, they'll kind of start eating from the top and move down. Ew, creepy to think about. They're, they'll lay in wait. They'll stalk their prey. They'll also, hide and pounce on it. They're good climbers, and they'll hang out in trees so they can go after birds and eggs. They're carnivores, so they're meat eaters. They'll also eat, a variety of mammals. They're opportunistic, so pretty much whatever comes along they'll eat. But they can eat pretty big mammals like capybaras or, boar and other pretty big animals. They're also really good swimmers. They and tigers both like water, and they'll chase prey into the water or dive in the water. And so they also eat things like gators or turtles. And they have such powerful jaws, they can just bite right through a turtle's shell really easily. They have spots, so we're not talking about stripes like tigers, but spots here on this faux fur hat, like this. And they're one of the spotted cats. There's quite a few spotted cats. They most resemble leopards, but leopards live in Africa or in Asia. And even though they look a lot like jaguars, they're quite different. For one thing, their spots are different. So jaguar has rosettes, so there'll be these, they have black spots, but they also have rosettes, which are these big black circles that are orangey yellow in the middle, and then other dots inside there. So they have spots within spots, and they call those rosettes, which the leopards don't have. So that's one way you can tell them apart. In my years at the zoo, I took care of a lot of cats, and I also happy to say I made friends with a lot of exotic cats. Several bobcats, who I would call my buddies, caracals, servals, ocelots, mountain lions, tigers, lions, snow leopards, um, leopards, jaguars, so all kinds of them. And of course, I like them all. I love everything, as you know if you've been watching my videos. Um, this story is about two in particular, and a little bit about some of the time I spent with them. Their names are Luca was the male and Maya was the female. And this was when the zoo brought these two cats in from other zoos to put them together, and hopefully they would become a pair and mate and have little baby jaguars. So at this time in the zoo, I was what's called a double relief. So that meant I was a main keeper's relief. So whenever their days off were, or they were on vacation or sick, then I took care of their group of animals. And at the LA Zoo, the group of animals that you took care of was called a string. And one of the ones that I was a relief on was the tiger string. And the tiger string also had snow leopards and jaguars, and it had ocelots, and then there were monkeys and other things on there. At the same time, I also was a relief keeper on the South American primate string, so I took care of a lot of monkeys and then cats at the same time, and I loved them all equally. At this time, the main tiger keeper, my friend Stephanie, had an emergency at home where she was going to have to be off work for several months. And so then I stepped in and became the 5-day-a-week big cat keeper. And it was during this time that we got these two new jaguars. First, the boy came, Luca. And, when a new animal comes into the zoo, they have to go into quarantine. And especially like cats. But we wanted to quarantine him on exhibit so that he would have all that room. And plus, they didn't really have a facility that was great to quarantine a big cat and up at the health center. So it was going to be better to do it in his exhibit. But then I couldn't take care of him because I was taking care of the other big cats. So we couldn't cross-contaminate until after he went through his quarantine. So then keepers or technicians that worked at the health center, they weren't really keepers, they were technicians, took care of him. But they took care of him right where I worked. So even though they put up a barrier, I'm still right there. That's where I bank my food for the other animals, and so I could see him all the time. And of course, right away he liked me, but then I couldn't take care of him. At the same time, he did not like any of the people from the health center, and he didn't like them to the extreme, which was, frustrating. And I knew as soon as I could get him and, be his keeper, because he was coming to me, that he was going to come to the string and I was going to be his keeper. I knew he would just be fine, and he wouldn't be stressed out and everything. But he just did not like those people who were taking care of him. So even though I couldn't, interact, touch him or go over there where he was or around his exhibit, I could sit in the kitchen area and I could see him. And then in the afternoon or at lunch, I would sit and just meditate and send him good energy and tell him I loved him and he was coming to me, and he would be happy once he got there and all of that. So he would come in and sit in a hallway where I could see him and sit down like he was listening to my meditation. In the meantime, just hating those other keepers. And he got so stressed out about it that he began to escalate to show how much he did not like them caring for him. So he started rubbing his forehead onto the outside cage to where he's rubbing a little you know, boo-boos on his head. And then he started chewing on his tail and taking all the hair off of it. And I'm like over here going, oh, for God's sakes, please just let me have the kitty. And to the point where he went on hunger strike because he wouldn't come in to eat because he didn't want to come in for them. They would want to bring him into the nighttime quarters and feed him, but he wouldn't come in. So then they wouldn't feed him outside, hoping he'd come in to eat. So then he just said, well, I'll just starve and not eat. So, he was doing a lot. And at the same time, it was really kind of hard on me because I love cats. And I don't know, I just knew he was going to be fine as soon as I had him. So I just kept sending him energy and meditated with him. It was finally to the time where his quarantine was over. Of course, he had nothing. And I don't think I ever knew anybody to have anything. I guess maybe occasionally they do. But and I'm like, oh boy, he's coming to me. But then they couldn't get him to come in. And then the supervisor's like, well, when you get him to come in, then we'll turn him over to Mark. So now he's just going, I'm not coming in for them. I will never come in for them. I'm going, oh, for corn's sake, this cannot go on another day. So like right after the first day, and he didn't come in, I went ahead and took care of all my animals and fed them. And then I just jumped over, because now the quarantine's over, but they still had that wall up because officially he wasn't going to come in. But I just jumped over that thing and I called him, Luca, and of course he just immediately came right into me. He went right on into the stall, let me close him in, close him out of the exhibit. He came over, took food out of my hand, ate his dinner, and he was a happy kitty. He never again chewed on his tail. He never rubbed his face. And he was just my little buddy bud. He was like, it was as if I had always been his keeper. Of course, I didn't know him before now. But he was my buddy bud from then on. And his favorite thing, which, I don't really recommend this to other people. A lot of times I spent my time saying, don't do what I'm doing. Because, I might have this relationship where the animal really trusts me, but that don't mean he trusts anybody else. For example, those technicians. And if they came down, he would right away go back into roaring, I don't like you, get away from me, kitty. So if he lets me scratch his ears, or he'd like to play with my foot in my boot, and he'd like to pretend like he was getting it and stuff, because I could stick it under his cage, which is not a safe thing, and I'm sure nobody would want me to tell you that, but he loved it. That was his favorite thing to do, and so I let him do it. So then Maya came in, and beautiful little female jaguar, oh so sweet, and of course right away she acted like she knew me, and she was a very sweet kitty, but they had to be separated. So Maya had a form of IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, and so she was on a special diet, and if she didn't follow it, or if she got stressed out and went off her diet, then she'd get sick, and there was a big rigmarole. And I'm going, oh great, a lot. But the good thing about her was she would take her medicine and everything really easily from my hand, and she was really sweet about it. And then, they were introduced together, and they liked each other fine. They were good buddies, and they hung out and played. They immediately bred. I felt she got pregnant, but it didn't come to term because she did all this I'm pregnant mommy behavior to me for a long period, where she just kept acting like and she gave, it was just very weird, but then it didn't come to term. But anyway, I would do meditations with her at my lunchtime about her belly aches. And because again, you'd be so busy as an animal keeper at the zoo, you had so many things to take care of and big exhibits that you had to clean and care for, that there was not really time in your schedule to do any kind of positive interaction. You just tried to I always just tried to squeeze it in whenever I could, and And usually that meant my lunch or stay afterwards or come in early or something like that. So this would be my lunchtime. So I would open their exhibit door, and Maya would come running in immediately because she couldn't wait to get in with me. And, after one day of sitting down, I'm a Reiki therapist, but also just plain old energy from source to the kiddies. And I would sit down with Pan, and we would do healing session, and I would talk to her. And then she would lay down and present her belly, and I'd run energy, and then she'd just fall asleep. Now, let me just say this. For a wild, exotic animal to fall asleep with a person there is really a special thing. I mean, I always felt so special that they would be that comfortable and feel that safe around me that they could just go to sleep. And she would do that, very cute. So after the first day, she was into it. So she'd come running in. Okay, it's time for our healing meditation. And she would lay down, assume the position, offer her belly. And I would sit on the other side of the cage door. It was mesh, so she could just see me and everything. And of course, it was up where my feet could go through. I didn't stick them under there. But I would sit over here and then meditate and send her energy, and she would just fall asleep. So after about 3 days of that, here comes Luca in, like, hey, what's going on in here and what's happening? And I think I would like a little bit of healing meditation too. And I go, oh, would you? He goes, yes, please. And so then he sits down by Maya. Maya's there all late, sacked out, all lounged, like, la, la, la. I'm having my healing work. And then Luke would come in, and then I would start on him with Pan, and we would focus our attention on him. And then he would just love it, and he would lay down and present himself and roll around and purr. And they do this little chuff noise, like if they're happy cats. They'll go at you. It's like they'll do it to each other too, but they'll do it to a human if they like you and trust you. And then they would both just fall asleep during the healing session. It also would stimulate their appetites, and with Maya, that would help her with eating what she needed to eat and stuff. But, it's really a pretty miraculous thing that I could get these two wild jaguars, and they would just come in and fall asleep at my feet and just be so comfortable and relaxed with that. And then, of course, they immediately recognized this connection with Pan and this healing energy, and they were really aware of it and would just soak it up and just sap it up. And of course, they always act like I was their best buddy and things like that. And of course, I love that to pieces. Now I'll show you a little bit of could have been a scary incident with my little Maya. So, she couldn't wait to come in off exhibit to be where I was, and they just would run in. And I never had that problem with any animals. Like, they always would just come running into me, which is great if you're an animal keeper. And if you're one that they don't come in running into you, it can be a huge headache. But I never really had that problem. And, she just couldn't wait. They would oftentimes, they begin to know the time, so they'd be right there at the door just anxiously waiting. And so there was an odd door that led to a hallway, but I, would clean their stalls and get them ready for bed and night and put hay in bed and dinners and everything in. Then I'd bring them in, and they'd go to their separate stalls. I'd have to separate them to feed so they wouldn't fight. And then if she seemed pregnant, you didn't want him with her for that. So they'd have to go to separate stalls and stuff, which they always just did what they were supposed to. But there was a lot of in and out of that hallway to get to the stalls. And so I had, all the doors, all locked and everything. But that door to that hallway, it had a latch hook. And pretty much all the doors in the zoo locked differently and closed differently. But this one, you could hook the lock in it without locking it, because you didn't want to lock it every time because you needed your keys for the other door. It was a big rigmarole. Um, but you could just hook it in the little loop, and you could go back and forth, and you could still just push the door up, and it would close up against the thing, but you didn't actually have the lock through the thing. So I'm getting them all in, and for some reason in my head, and I don't like to tell this story because it makes me seem like I'm less than perfect, and we don't want that. and and it's a story where I think, thank goodness, I had a lovely relationship with Pan and the animals. But for some reason, who knows why, something I did hundreds of times, and then all of a sudden, this time, the lock was on there, but it wasn't through the loop, and I didn't notice it for some reason, because I'd already locked up all their cages. And then I'd opened up their door for them to come in, and you shared that lock. So I had unlocked it there and moved it over there. Anyway, that wasn't latched. And so Maya comes running in like she always does. Here, Dad, here I come. And she bonks that gate with her noodle, and that door just opens wide up. And here I stand, and Maya's just right there, at my feet. And she's looking up like, hi, this is different. And I'm thinking, yep, this is different. And I go, Maya, back up. And then she just takes about 4 steps back, and then so I could close the door and latch it. So that was and that's giving me goosebumps again, my little adventure with my precious wild jaguar Maya, who I guess she could have jumped up and sunk her fangs into my skull, into my brain, killed me. But luckily she didn't. And I learned my lesson for another day. There you go. So those are a couple of little fun stories with those 2 jags that I love to bits. And I always will love them to pieces. My little booger heads. And so I just wanted to share that with you guys. And I hope it will maybe make you appreciate jaguars and want them to stay here on the earth with us, because they're our beautiful brothers and sisters of the rainforest. Okay, Jaguars, I'm going to say thank you for joining us today for our story and for being with us. And thank you, Jaguar Group, for coming forward and interacting with me in a positive and loving way. I personally appreciate that so much. And also sending love and appreciation to Maya and to Luca. Little cute bobbleheads. All right. Okay, guys. Until the next time in the next Animal Tale, I'll see you around.